Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Uncovering Our Hidden History. My name is Anna. I'm a forensic genealogist and historical researcher, and I use these two things together to try to uncover our hidden history, things we've been lied about or things that were buried. And we have a lot to cover today. This is part 5A of our Kingdom of Judah series. And it's a long one, so I'm going to break it up into two parts, 5A and 5B. So let's get going. I know it's been a little bit, it's been a couple weeks since I did the last video, and some of you are probably wondering, where did she go? But I just took a little time to be able to observe the Passover last Friday, and then Feast of Unleavened Bread started on Saturday, and of course then we had Sabbath in there as well, and then oh my goodness, I didn't think that it was going to take so long to research the things I'm going to be presenting to you, but all I can say is the Kingdom of Judah, oh my goodness, they splintered into so many different groups in different times in history, even way before Jerusalem was destroyed. And it was like opening Pandora's box as I started researching, the Mizrahi Hebrews, for example. It just kept going and going and going. And hence why we're going to have two parts to presentation 5. And so I did decide I'm going to wait until part 6 to cover the Sephardic and Portuguese Hebrews, just because there is so much with them, and they're a little bit more of the wider known in our later, in a more modern history, and they also, kind of tie into the slave trade. So I decided to hold off and cover them for part 6. But in the meantime, we're going to start with the Mizrahi Hebrews and then Beta Israel, which are the Ethiopian Hebrews. And there is so much just with the Ethiopian Hebrews that this is going to be 5A, and then 5B will cover some of the other groups. So let me go ahead and pull up my slideshow. Okay. So this is Kingdom of Judah series, part 5A. Between 5A and 5B, we will be talking about the Mizrahi, the Ethiopian, the Menashe, the various Indian Hebrews, and the Chinese as well. So as I said, we'll cover the Mizrahi and the Ethiopian in part 5A, and then in 5B we will continue on with the other ones listed there. Okay, of course, our fair use for education purposes disclaimer. Okay, let's talk about the Mizrahi Hebrews and who they are. Okay. The Mizrahi Jews, as they're called, are descended from Hebrew communities with Middle Eastern and North African origins, including those in Iraq, Iran, Yemen, and other regions, and they are often distinguished from the Sephardic Jews, who are actually Hebrews, who trace their roots to the Iberian Peninsula. Mizrahi, meaning Eastern in Hebrew, refers to Hebrew communities from Middle Eastern and North African countries. The term Mizrahi is used to describe Hebrews who lived in West Asia, Central Asia, North Africa, and parts of the North Caucasus for many generations under Muslim rule during the Middle Ages. Their earliest communities date from late antiquity, and the oldest and largest of these communities were in modern Iraq, which was formerly Babylonia, and then Iran, which was formerly Persia, and Yemen. Today, most Mizrahi Jews, or Hebrews, live either in Israel or in the United States. Some Mizrahi communities, like those in Yemen, have maintained distinct traditions and practices, while others have undergone a process of Sephardic assimilation. And I was surprised to find that when researching the Mizrahi, that many of them, quite a large majority of them, immigrated to Israel, and so there's almost as many Mizrahi Hebrews as there are Ashkenazi there, living there, and then there's a smattering of the Ethiopian, a lot of the Ethiopian Hebrews, as well as the I think the Indian communities. And so here are some pictures I found that kind of show what they look like. And you can see that they definitely have a Middle Eastern look about them, but also I could see in some of the darker ones, you can kind of see a mix of all the ethnicities that we just mentioned. So again, like I did in the previous video, when we covered the Yoruba, the Lemba, the Ibu, and so on and so forth, I have some short videos that are going to accompany each one of these, just because I think that it makes it a little bit more engaging and interesting, and really helpful at the same time.
On a wrinkled forearm. Chances are, if you live in North America, your experience of Judaism has been pretty Ashkenazi, or European. After all, 66% of American Jews identify as Ashkenazi. But despite the cultural traditions built in the diaspora, Jews are indigenous to the Middle East. In fact, the term Jew comes from Judea, or Yehuda, the Iron Age kingdom whose artifacts lie just beneath the surface of modern-day Israel. In the 2nd century CE, Roman occupiers crushed the last hint of Jewish rebellion in the region. The subsequent Jewish exile lasted nearly 2,000 years, creating a far-flung Jewish diaspora. The Jews who made their way to Southwest Asia and North Africa became known as Mizrahim, Easterners. For centuries, these Middle Eastern and North African Jews lived and worked, prospered or suffered as guests in foreign countries, their fortunes linked to the whims of often unfriendly rulers. Like Jews around the world, Mizrahi Jews dreamed of returning to their ancestral homeland, directing their daily prayers toward Jerusalem. This dream became an urgent necessity as the Second World War inched closer to their borders. By 1941, the Nazi ideology that had consumed Europe made its way to the Middle East, violently. After a failed coup attempt, Iraqi fascists took their displeasure out on the country's Jews, murdering, maiming, raping, and looting in a rampage of violence known as the Farhud, Arabic for violent dispossession. Under the collaborationist Vichy government, North African Jews were stripped of their citizenship. Thousands were then deported to forced labor camps where they were horribly abused. By 1945, Europe was a smoldering ruin with its Jewish communities hollowed out. As shell-shocked refugees trickled into Palestine, the UN prepared to vote on a plan that would carve out two separate states, one for Jews and one for Arabs, from the tiny sliver of land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. In response, Muslim countries from Egypt to Iraq vowed that if Israel came into existence, the region's Jews would suffer horribly. A New York Times headline from May 1948 summarized the situation aptly. Jews in grave danger in all Muslim lands, 900,000 in Africa and Asia face wrath of their foes. But Mizrahi Jews had a safe haven. True, their destination was a tiny, desperately poor country embroiled in a war against 6 much larger nations. And yes, it was bursting at the seams with refugees and survivors from all over the world. But it was also a place toward which Jews had directed 2,000 years' worth of prayers. And it was, and remains, the only country in the world that provides Jews with refuge, no questions asked. All told, nearly 600,000 Mizrahi Jews streamed into Israel between 1948 and 1972. Most were destitute, their property seized by the governments of their former homes. The total value of the assets stolen from Mizrahi Jews by Muslim governments is estimated to be worth $6.7 billion in today's dollars. But Mizrahi Jews who emigrated to Israel brought with them a different kind of wealth, that of a rich culture. They spoke Arabic, marked auspicious occasions with henna ceremonies, and read the Torah with lilting inflections. Uncomfortably for the Ashkenazi establishment, Mizrahi Jews bore a deep cultural resemblance to the country's highly unfriendly neighbors. Plus, many of the die-hard secularists in the government disdained the piety of the recent immigrants, who clung tenaciously to their religious traditions. As you might imagine, the transition to Israeli life was rocky at first. Millions of immigrants from all over the world stretched the state's meager resources. There wasn't enough money or room to house them all. So the new Israeli government created temporary transit camps made of corrugated tin called ma'abarot. Numerous government leaders described the ma'abarot's conditions as catastrophic. Though they were not built solely to house Mizrahim, 58% of the Jews who came from Arab lands before 1951 were sent to these overcrowded shantytowns, compared with 18% of those who came from Europe. The discrimination continued as the state matured, but so did Mizrahi resistance. Riots in 1959 eventually inspired a movement known as the Black Panthers, modeled after the American civil rights group of the same name. Slowly, Mizrahi figures became much more mainstream, strongly influencing Israeli culture. World-famous Yemenite-born singer Ofra Haza led Israel to a second-place victory at Eurovision in 1983. A year later, Iraqi-born Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, a hero to Israelis of all backgrounds, established a major political party called Shas to represent Mizrahi interests. Today, Mizrahi culture is almost synonymous with Israel. Turn on the radio, and you'll likely hear the silsulim and ma'awalim of traditional Mizrahi music transposed onto modern pop. Ask any Israeli about an iconic Israeli food, and they'll tell you malawach, not matzo balls. You'd be hard-pressed to find a Jewish Israeli of any background who hasn't attended a mimuna or a henna. Most notably, as of 2016, 20% of Israelis are half Ashkenazi and half Mizrahi. The country's European founders might not have imagined their country with over 50% Mizrahi. They may not have predicted Mizrahi politicians in the Knesset, mixed ethnicity families in every other house, or Mizrahi entertainers at the top of the charts. But in the words of writer Matzi Friedman, that we are free, safe from persecution, and in charge of ourselves, these things are new. But that we are here, in the Middle East, there is nothing new about that at all.
Okay, well, I hope you found that interesting. I did, because to me there's always been a little bit of a confusion as to the difference between the Mizrahi and the Sephardic. So I was really happy to have found that video and cleared up some things for me. So hopefully you found it helpful too. And so now let's jump into Beta Israel, aka our Ethiopian Hebrews. And so here are some pictures I found to show what they look like. Okay. And here as well. I find it interesting their head wraps are very different. which makes me wonder if it's a more ancient type of head wrap or turban or head covering. Okay, and before I get into my slides, because there's a lot to unpack, I have another video I want you all to watch, kind of to explain everything that we're going to cover on the slides. Okay.
The Beta Israel, also known as Ethiopian Jews, are a Jewish community that lived for centuries in the area of the Kingdom of Aksum and the Ethiopian Empire, which is currently divided between the modern-day Amhara and Tigray regions of Ethiopia. Most of the Beta Israel community immigrated to Israel in the late 20th century. The Beta Israel lived in northern and northwestern Ethiopia in more than 500 small villages which were spread over a wide territory, alongside populations that were predominantly Christian and Muslim. Most of them were concentrated mainly on what are today North Gondar Zone, Shire Inda Selassie. They practice a non-Talmudic form of Judaism that is similar in some respects to Karaite Judaism. In Israel, this form of Judaism is referred to as Haymanot. Beta Israel appear to have been isolated from mainstream Jewish communities for at least a millennium. They suffered religious persecution, and a significant portion of the community were forced into Christianity during the 19th and 20th centuries. Those converted to Christianity came to be known as the Falash Mura. Many of the Beta Israel's accounts of their own origins state that they stem from the very ancient migration of some portion of the tribe of Dan to Ethiopia, were led by the sons of Moses, perhaps at the time of the Exodus. Alternative timelines include the later crises in Judea, that is, the split of the northern kingdom of Israel from the southern kingdom of Judah after the death of King Solomon or the Babylonian exile. According to one account, the Beta Israel originated in the kingdom of Israel, and they were the contemporaries rather than the descendants of King Solomon and Menelik. According to another account, the forefathers of the Beta Israel are supposed to have arrived in Ethiopia by coming from the north, independently from Menelik and his company. The Falashas migrated like many of the other sons of Israel to exile in Egypt after the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians in 586 BCE, the time of the Babylonian exile. They remained in exile in Egypt for a few hundred years until the reign of Cleopatra. When she was engaged in a war against Augustus Caesar, the Jews supported her. When she was defeated, it became dangerous for the small minorities to remain in Egypt, so there was another migration between approximately 39 to 31 BCE. Some of the migrants went to South Arabia and settled in Yemen. Some of them went to Sudan and continued to migrate until they reached Ethiopia, where they were helped by Egyptian traders who guided them through the desert. Some of them entered Ethiopia through Quara, near the Sudanese border, and some of them came via Eritrea. Later in time, there was an Abyssinian king named Caleb who wished to enlarge his kingdom, so he declared war on the Yemen and conquered it. And as a result, another group of Jews, led by Azonos and Phinehas, arrived in Ethiopia during his reign. The Ethiopian history described in the Kebra Negast relates that Ethiopians are descendants of Israelite tribes who came to Ethiopia with Menelik I, alleged to be the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, or Makeda in the legend. See 1 Kings chapter 10 verses 1 to 13 and 2 Chronicles chapter 9 verses 1 to 12. The legend relates that Menelik, as an adult, returned to his father in Jerusalem and later resettled in Ethiopia. He took with him the Ark of the Covenant. The Kebra Negast asserts that the Beta Israel are descended from a battalion of men of Judah who fled southward down the Arabian coastal lands from Judea after the breakup of the Kingdom of Israel into two kingdoms in the 10th century BCE, while King Rehoboam reigned over Judah. Many Beta Israel believe that they are descended from the tribe of Dan. to prove the antiquity and authenticity of their claims, the Beta Israel cite the 9th century CE testimony of Eldad Hadani, the Danite, from a time before the Zagween dynasty was established. Eldad was a Jewish man who appeared in Egypt and created a stir in that Jewish community and elsewhere in the Mediterranean Jewish communities he visited, with claims that he had come from a Jewish kingdom of pastoralists far to the south. The only language Eldad spoke was a hitherto unknown dialect of Hebrew. Although he strictly followed the Mosaic commandments, his observance differed in some details from rabbinic halakha. Some observers thought that he might be a Karaite, although his practice also differed from theirs. He carried Hebrew books that supported his explanations of halakha. He cited ancient authorities in the scholarly traditions of his own people. Eldad said that the Jews of his own kingdom descended from the tribe of Dan, which included the biblical war hero Samson, who had fled the civil war in the kingdom of Israel between Solomon's son Rehoboam and Jeroboam the son of Nebat, and resettled in Egypt. From there, they moved southwards up the Nile into Ethiopia. The Beta Israel say this confirms that they are descended from these Danites. Some Beta Israel, however, assert that their Danite origins go back to the time of Moses, when some Danites parted from other Jews right after the Exodus and moved south to Ethiopia. Eldad the Danite speaks of at least 3 waves of Jewish immigration into his region, creating other Jewish tribes and kingdoms. The earliest wave settled in a remote kingdom of the tribe of Moses. This was the strongest and most secure Jewish kingdom of all, with farming villages, cities, and great wealth. Other Ethiopian Jews who appeared in the Mediterranean world over the succeeding centuries and persuaded rabbinic authorities there that they were of Jewish descent, and so could, if slaves be ransomed by Jewish communities, join synagogues, marry other Jews, etc., also referred to the Mosaic and Danite origins of Ethiopian Jewry. The Mosaic claims of the Beta Israel, in any case, like those of the Zagwe dynasty, are ancient. According to a 2020 study by Agranat Tamir et al., the DNA of the Ethiopian Jews is mostly of East African origin, but about 20% of their genetic makeup is of Middle Eastern Semitic people origin and shows similarity to modern Jewish and Arab populations and Bronze Age Canaanites. The Beta Israel are autosomally closer to other populations from the Horn of Africa than to any other Jewish population, including Yemenite Jews. A 2012 study by Oster et al. Concluded that the Ethiopian Jewish community was founded about 2,000 years ago, probably by only a relatively small number of Jews from elsewhere, with local people joining to the community, causing Beta Israel to become genetically distant from other Jewish groups.
Wow, so much in that video. And it really seems that there are quite a few traditions and different waves of the various Hebrew groups into Ethiopia. And so let's break those down. So the first one let's cover is what they talked about regarding the Danites. So one of the traditions that the video mentioned says that some of the Beta Israel have a tradition that they descend from the Danites, specifically during the time that they were emancipated from slavery in Egypt by Moses. And so it said that after crossing the Red Sea, or the Sea of Suf, with the Hebrews that were emancipated from Egypt, a part of the larger group broke off from part from the larger group broke off, and they settled in Cush. And then another tradition from some of the other Beta Israel Ethiopians say that they escaped from Judea after the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians under Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. They fled to Egypt and were exiled there for a few hundred years until the reign of Cleopatra, Queen of Egypt. When Cleopatra was defeated by Augustus Caesar, it became dangerous for the exiled Judeans to remain in Egypt, so this group was again forced to migrate, and that's supposed to be 39 BC to 31 BC. Sorry about that. And then some of those, so the ones that migrated out of Egypt, some of them went to South Arabia and settled in Yemen, and then others went to Sudan, and from there migrated into Ethiopia, where they were helped by Egyptian traders who guided them through the desert. And I thought this was interesting because if you remember our last video, part 4, when we were talking about the Lemba tribe, do you remember the Lemba's oral traditions are that they also escaped from Judea, from Jerusalem and Judea, about either before or after the destruction of the first temple by Nebuchadnezzar, and they fled to Yemen. I believe they said they went to Senna, which was in Yemen, and then after there was wars or disturbances breaking out there, they then fled Yemen and settled in the area of Zimbabwe, where they are now. So I find it that very interesting, that event of Nebuchadnezzar, the Babylonians coming in under King Nebuchadnezzar and laying waste to Jerusalem and Judea and destroying the first temple. It seems that there was a lot of splintering off at that time as well. And so very interesting that you've got two different groups, same event, both settling in Yemen, and then from there they go to two different paths. So I just thought that was very interesting. Okay, and then another tradition is regarding King Menelik, who is a son of Solomon. Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, or she's also referred to as the Queen of the South. And so this book is, I'll just read it. It says, this volume contains a complete translation of the famous Ethiopian work, the Kebra Negast, i.e., or what that means is the glory of the kings. Kebra Negast means glory of the kings of Ethiopia. This work has been held in peculiar honor in Abyssinia for several centuries. And throughout that country, it has been and still is venerated by the people as containing the final proof of their descent from the Hebrew patriarchs and of the kinship of their kings from the Solomonic line. It is also regarded as the final authority on the history of their conversion, or the conversion of the Ethiopians, from the worship of the sun, moon, and stars to that of the worship of the Most High of Israel. The importance of the book, both for the kings and the people of Abyssinia, is clearly shown by the letter that King John of Ethiopia wrote to the late Lord Granville in August of 1872. King John wrote, "There is a book called the Kebra Negast, which contains the law of the whole of Ethiopia, and the names of the shums, which are chiefs, and the churches and the provinces are in this book. I pray that you would find out who has got this book and send it to me, for in my country my people will not obey my orders without it." So kind of the backstory to that, to the book that he's asking for, is that in August of 1868, so just a few short years before, the great collection of Ethiopic manuscripts which the British Army brought away from Magdala after the defeat and suicide of King Theodore was brought to the British Museum, and among them were 2 fine copies of the Kebra Negast. Later, these were numbered Oriental 818 and Oriental 819, respectively, and were taken to the British Museum and stored there. So when a copy of King John's letter was sent to the British Museum, the trustees decided to grant King John's request, and the manuscript was restored to him December 14th, 1872. So this book obviously was very, very important in the kingdom of Ethiopia, because King John is saying that his people won't obey him without it, or unless they had proof of it. Okay, so I think this picture is supposed to be from Axum within Ethiopia, and then now within the book of the Kebra Negast, it's basically, the tradition states that the Queen of the South, or the Queen of Sheba, and I should also mention that Sheba, the kingdom of Sheba, I believe descends from Joktan, and Joktan is a descendant of Shem, so they are a Semitic people. But nobody seems to know how the Queen of Sheba came to be in Ethiopia, but she was the reigning queen in Ethiopia, and so she decided to travel to Israel to question King Solomon. She had several things that she was pondering and wanting answers to. She had heard from one of her the traders in her kingdom who had taken items to King Solomon for the building of the temple and his palace, and the stories that he brought back and the tales that he told of his time there just really, really intrigued her. So she decided to make a trip of her own. And so she traveled, she stayed several months, and we get only the briefest story about this encounter in the scriptures. And so this is why I really am enjoying the Kebra Negast, because it fills in so many gaps, which I'm going to read to you in a minute. So anyway, she stayed several months and was taught about the Most High and his ways by Solomon. And they had many, many lengthy discussions about the questions that she had, and she was impressed, so impressed at the wisdom he was given. And so long story short, they fell in love and ended up being wedded, and then produced an heir by the name of Menelik. And so when she, I'm trying to think, I'm not sure if I'm going to read it or not, but when she discovered she was pregnant, she did not tell Solomon, and she just went back to her country. And so he did not find out till years later. But it said when Menelik was 22 years of age, he traveled to see his father Solomon, who received him warmly. Solomon had Menelik coronated as a king in a very elaborate ceremony. Menelik did not want to be second to Solomon's first son, Rehoboam, and so he chose to leave Israel and return to his mother in Ethiopia, where he transplanted the kingdom of Judah and ruled as Ethiopia's first king. So this is kind of a synopsis of what I'm about to read to you. So let me come back over here. Okay, so this is the version I have, which is a little bit different, but it's based on, the author is E.A. Wallace Budge. And I'm not sure, trying to see here, it looks like it was, the copyright on it is 1922 by E.A. Wallace Budge. So you can see I've got some little tabs here. These are just some highlights that I would like to read. And so, again, kind of just going along with the summary, it says, the fame of the wisdom of Solomon reached the ends of the earth, chiefly because he traded with merchants from the sea coast and from the countries to the south of Palestine on each side of the Red Sea. These merchants brought the precious woods and stones and scents and spices, and the rich stuffs and other objects which Solomon used to decorate the temple and also his own palace. And when their caravans returned home, And when their caravans returned home, their servants described to eager listeners the great works that the king of Israel was carrying out in Jerusalem. Among the masters or leaders of these caravans was one by the name of Tamrin, who managed the business affairs of a queen of the south, whom Arab writers call Balkis, and the Ethiopian writers call her Makeda, Makeda. But neither of these names is ancient, and it is very doubtful if either represents in any way the true name of the southern queen. It is doubtful also if she was an Ethiopian, and it is far more probable that her home was Sheba, or also called Saba or Sheba, in the southwest of Arabia. As she was a worshiper of the sun, and she was probably a princess among the Sabaeans. And then on the other hand, her ancestors may have been merely settlers in Arabia, and some of them may have been of Ethiopian origin. The Kebra Negast says that she was a very beautiful woman, bright and intelligent, but tells us nothing about her family. When Makeda, or the Queen of Sheba, arrived in Jerusalem, she lodged in the splendid quarters which Solomon prepared for her, and she had frequent opportunity of conversing with the king. The more she saw him, the more impressed with the handsomeness of his person, and with the piety and wisdom and the eloquence of his speech, which he uttered in low, musical, and a sympathetic voice. She spent several months in Jerusalem as the king's guest, and one night, after a great and splendid banquet, which he gave to the notables of his kingdom in her honor, he took her as his wife. When Makeda knew that she was with child, she bade farewell to Solomon, and having received from him a ring as a token, she returned to her own country, where her son Menelik was born. In Ethiopic literature, this son is often called Walda Tabib, son of the wise man. When the boy reached early manhood, he pressed his mother Makeda to allow him to go see his father Solomon in Jerusalem. And his importunity was so great that at length she gave him the ring which Solomon had given her. So she tried to brush him off at first and dissuade him because she didn't want him to leave. She was afraid that he would want to stay in Jerusalem with his father. And so she tried to, skirt around it 2 or 3 times, but he kept pressing her. And so she gave in, and she gave him the ring which Solomon had given to her, and with the instructions to show it to Solomon, so that was his proof that he was the son of Makeda. Excuse me. And so she sent him there under the care of her caravan driver, Tamrin. On his arrival at Gaza, The people in the city and everywhere in the district recognized his striking likeness to Solomon, and almost royal honors were paid to him by them. The same thing happened in Jerusalem, and when the officials of Solomon's palace were leading him to the presence chamber, all the household knew without being told that a son was being taken to his father. Okay, so I'm going to skip through here for a little bit. Let's see. Father and son fell into each other's arms when they met, and the son had no need to prove his identity by producing the ring which his father had given to his beloved Makeda. For Solomon proclaimed straightway the young man's parentage and made him to occupy the royal throne with him after he had arrayed him in royal apparel. Solomon spared no pains in providing both instruction and amusement for here they're calling him Bena Lechem or Ben Lahakim while he was in Jerusalem. For Solomon hoped to keep him with him there. But after a few months, the young man was eager to get back to his mother and to his own country. And Tamrin, the leader of Makeda's caravans, also wanted to be gone. Menelik, as we may now call him, saw that Rehoboam must succeed Solomon on the throne of Israel, and he had no wish to occupy the subordinate position of a second son in Jerusalem. So therefore he pressed his father Solomon to give him leave to depart. When the king had arranged that the elder sons of all his nobles should accompany Menelik on his return to his mother's capital, and had arranged with Menelik for the establishment of a duplicate Jewish kingdom in Ethiopia, he then permitted him to depart. When Makeda was in Jerusalem, she had learned that the fourth tabernacle, Zion, in the temple of Jerusalem was the abode of the Most High of Israel, and the place where the Most High was pleased to dwell. And in her letter to Solomon, she begged him to send her, as a holy talisman, a portion of the fringe of the covering of the tabernacle. Solomon told Menelik that he would grant Makeda's request, but this satisfied neither Menelik nor his nobles. And to speak briefly, Menelik and Tamrin and the eldest sons of the Hebrew notables in Jerusalem, who were destined to help Menelik to found his kingdom in Ethiopia, entered into a conspiracy together to steal the tabernacle and to carry it off to Ethiopia. Their object was to keep the Most High of Israel with them, and this they expected to be able to effect by stealing the tabernacle made of gold and wood, which was according to the pattern of the original spirit tabernacle in heaven, which contained the 2 tables of the law, the pot of manna, Aaron's rod, etc. One of the conspirators who had access to the chamber in which the tabernacle Zion rested removed it from under its curtain and substituted a construction in wood of exactly the same size and shape, which he had caused to be made for this purpose. The theft was not discovered until Menelik and Tamrin and their company of young Hebrews and Ethiopians were well on their road to the Red Sea, and though Solomon sent out swift horsemen to overtake them and cut them off, and himself followed on horseback with all speed possible, the thieves made good their escape, and the king of Israel returned to Jerusalem in great grief. In due course, Menelik reached his mother's capital, and he and the tabernacle of Zion were received with frantic rejoicings. And Makeda, having abdicated her queenship in favor of her son Menelik, established in Ethiopia a kingdom modeled on that of Israel, and introduced into his country the laws of the Most High and the admonitions of Moses. and the social rules and the regulations with which the name of the great lawgiver was associated in those days. So, excuse me, it says the Kebra Negast tells us nothing about Menelik after his coronation, except that he had carried on one or two campaigns against the enemies of his country, and the book is silent in respect of Queen Makeda's history after her voluntary abdication. And so there's a lot more here. I'm going to skip ahead to one of the recorded encounters between Solomon and his son. So let me find it here for a minute. Okay, so we will start here. When King Solomon first lays eyes on his son. And it says, and Benaniah, the son of Yodahe, went out and brought Bina Lechem, or Menelik, inside. And when King Solomon saw him, he rose up and moved forward to welcome him. And he loosed the band of apparel from his shoulder, and he embraced him with his hands resting on his chest, and he kissed his mouth and forehead and eyes, and he said unto him, Behold, my father David has renewed his youth and has risen from the dead. And Solomon the king turned around to those who had announced the arrival of the young man, and he said unto them, You said to me, he resembles you, but this is not my stature, but this is the stature of David, my father, in the days of his early manhood, and he is handsomer than I am. And Solomon the king rose up straightway, and he went into his chamber, and he arrayed the young man in apparel made of cloth embroidered with gold, and a belt of gold, and he set a crown upon his head, and a ring upon his finger. And having arrayed him in glorious apparel, which bewitched the eyes, he seated him upon his throne, that he might be equal in rank to himself. And he said unto the nobles and officers of Israel, O you who treat me with contumely among yourselves, and say that I have no son, look ye, this is my son, the fruit that has gone forth from my body, whom the Most High, the Lord of Israel, has given me, when I expected it not. And his nobles answered and said, Blessed be the mother who has brought forth this young man, and blessed be the day wherein you had union with the mother of this young man, for there has risen upon us from the root of Jesse a shining man, who shall be king of the posterity of our posterity of his seed. Concerning his father, none shall ask questions, and none shall say, Whence this is coming? Verily he is an Israelite of the seed of David, fashioned perfectly in the likeness of his father's form and appearance. We are his servants, and he shall be our king. And they brought unto him gifts, each according to his greatness. And the young man took that ring which his mother had given him when they were alone together. And he said to his father, Take this ring, and remember the word which you did speak to the queen, and give us a portion of the fringe of the covering of the tabernacle of the law of the Most High, so that we may worship it all of our days, and all those who are subject to us, and those who are in the kingdom of the queen. And the king answered and said to him, Why do you give me this ring as a sign? Without your giving me a sign, I discovered the likeness of your form to myself, for you are indeed my son. And then the merchant Tamrin spoke unto King Solomon, saying, Hearken, O king, unto the message which your handmaiden, the queen, my mistress, sent to me. Take this young man, anoint him, and consecrate him, and bless him, and make him king over our country, and give him the command that a woman shall never again reign in this country. And please send him back in peace. and peace be with the might of your kingdom and with your brilliant wisdom. As for me, I never wished that he should come where you are, but he urged me exceedingly that he should be allowed to come to you. And besides, I was afraid for him, lest he should fall sick on the journey, either through thirst for water or the heat of the sun, and that I should bring my gray hairs down to the grave in sorrow. Then I put my trust in the holy heavenly Zion, the tabernacle of the law of the Most High, that you would not withhold it in your wisdom. For your nobles cannot return to their houses and look upon their children, by reason of the abundance of wisdom and food which you give them, according to their desire. And they say, the table of Solomon is better for us than enjoying and gratifying ourselves in our own houses. And because of this, I, through my fear, sought protection so that you might not establish him with you, but you might send him back to me in peace, without sickness and suffering, in love and in peace, that my heart might rejoice at having encountered you. And then, of course, the king answered and said, besides travailing with him and suckling him, what else has a woman to do with a son? A daughter belongs to the mother, and a boy to the father. And with an oath, he said, bring forth, and having sworn, and it says, and as for this my son, I will not give him to the queen, but I will make him king over Israel. For this is my firstborn, the first of my race, whom the Most High has given me. And then Solomon sent unto the young man evening and morning dainty meats and apparel of honor and gold and silver. And he said unto him, it is better for you to dwell here in our country with us, where the house of the Most High is, and where the tabernacle of the law of the Most High is, and where he dwells. And the young man, his son, sent a message unto him, saying, gold and silver and rich apparel are not wanting in our country. But I came here in order to hear your wisdom, and to see your face, and to salute you, and to pay homage to your kingdom, and to make obeisance to you. And then I intended to have you send me away to my mother and to my own country. For no man hates the place where he was born, and everyone loves the things of his native country. And though you give me dainty meats, I do not love them, and they are not suitable for my body. But the meats whereby I grow and become strong are those that are gratifying to me. And then he just goes on. And he says, and as for Zion, the tabernacle of the law of the Most High, give me a portion of it, the fringe of the covering thereof, and I will worship it with my mother, and with all of those who are subject to my sovereignty. For my lady the queen has already rooted out all of those who served idols, and those who worship strange objects and stones and trees, and she has rooted them out, and has brought them to Zion, the tabernacle of the law of the Most High. For she had heard from you, and had learned, and she did according to your word, and we worship the Most High. And the king was not able to make his son consent to remain in Jerusalem with all of his persuadings. And and then I found this very interesting. And so they're having discourse back and forth and conversations, and Solomon is asking his son questions. And then Menelik, his son, answered and says, it is impossible for me to live here. Nay, I must go to my mother, thou favoring me with your blessing. For you have a son who is better than I am, namely Rehoboam, who was born of your wife lawfully, whilst my mother is not your wife according to the law. And King Solomon answered and said to him, since you speak in this wise, or in this way, according to the law, I myself am not the son of my father David. for he took the wife of another man, whom he caused to be slain in battle, and he begot me by her. So he's recounting the story of David taking Bathsheba, and then she got pregnant with the first child, and then I think you guys know that story. And then he ended up having to kill, I think it was Uriah was the name of her husband. He ended up having to send him out to battle where he would get killed, and then that child ended up dying, and then he then took Bathsheba as his wife, David did, and Solomon is their son. So he's basically saying, I myself have been begotten because my father caused my mother's husband to be slain in battle. But the Most High is compassionate, and he has forgiven him. Who is more wicked and more foolish than men? And who is as compassionate and as wise as the Most High? The Most High has made me of my father, and he has made The Most High has made me of my father, and you has he made of me according to his will. And as for you, O my son, you fear our Lord, the Most High, and do no violence in the face of your father, so that in times to come you may not meet with violence from him that shall go forth from your loins, and that your seed may prosper upon the earth. Oh, okay. And he says, my son Rehoboam is only a boy of 6 years old, and you are my firstborn son, and you have come to reign and to lift up the spear of him that begot it. Behold, I have been reigning for 29 years, and your mother came to me in the 7th year of my kingdom. And it pleased the Most High, and if it pleases Most High, he shall make me to attain the span of the days of my father. And when I shall be gathered to my fathers, you shall sit upon my throne, that you shall reign in my stead, and the elders of Israel will love you exceedingly. And I will make a marriage for you, and I will give you as many queens and concubines as you desire. And then you shall be blessed in the land of inheritance with the blessing that the Most High gave unto our fathers, even as he covenanted with Noah his servant, and with Abraham his friend, and the righteous men, their descendants after them, down to David my father. So they're going back and forth and back and forth. And okay, and so basically, long story short, Solomon consents to letting Menelik go back to Ethiopia, but then here was his plan. So, and then Solomon the king went back to his house, and he caused to be gathered together his counselors and his officers and the elders of his kingdom. And he said unto them, I am not able to make this young man consent to dwell here. And now hearken unto me and to what I shall say to you. Come, let us make him king of the country of Ethiopia, together with your children. You sit on my right hand and on my left hand. And in like manner the eldest of your children shall sit on his right hand and on his left hand. Come, O you counselors and officers, let us give him your firstborn children. And we shall have 2 kingdoms. I will rule here with you, and our children shall reign there with him. And I will put my trust in the Most High, that a 3rd time he will give me seed, and that a 3rd king will be to me. Now Baltazar, the king of Rom, it's R-O-M, wishes that I would give my son to his daughter, and to make him with his daughter king over the whole country of Rom, R-O-M. So I don't think this is Rome, so this is Ram. Feel free, if you know where this kingdom of Ram is, throw a comment down below and let us know. I've never heard of this kingdom before. For besides her, he has no other child, and he has sworn that he will only make king a man who is of the seed of David, my father. And if we rule there, we shall be 3 kings. And Rehoboam shall have reign over Israel. For thus saith the prophecy of David my father, the seed of Solomon shall become 3 heads of kingdoms upon the earth. And we will send unto them priests, and we will ordain laws for them, and they shall worship and serve the Most High of Israel under the 3 royal heads. And the Most High shall be praised by the race of his people Israel, and be exalted in all the earth, even as my father wrote in his book, saying, Tell the nations that the Most High is king. And again he said, Announce to the peoples his work, praise him and sing unto him. And then he's just going on and on. And then it says, And come now, let us make this young man king, and let us send him away with your children, those who possess wealth, and you who possess wealth and position. According to the position and wealth that you have here, shall your children have there. And they shall see the ordering of royalty, and we will establish them according to our law, and we will direct them and give them commands, and send them away to reign there. And the priests and the officers and the counselors answered him and said, Do thou send thy firstborn, and we will send our children also according to your wish. Who can resist the commandment of the Most High and the King? They are the servants of you, and of the seed, and of your seed, as you have proclaimed. If you wish, you can sell them and their mothers to be slaves. It is not for us to transgress your command and the command of the Most High, our Elohim. And then they made ready to do for them, their children, what it was right to do, and to send them into the country of Ethiopia, so that they might reign there and dwell there forever, they and their seed from generation to generation. And then it just goes on from there of how they anointed Menelik with oil and the horn, and they had a whole ceremony where he was coronated as king of Ethiopia before he went back. So I just find this very interesting, because we don't hear about this in scripture whatsoever, and this is what I'm talking about. So much has been taken out, and this is the first, what I would consider like an extra biblical book that even talks about this. And then I've definitely never heard about this kingdom of Ram, R-O-M, and whether that came to be or not. So I don't know. Did any of you know that there were prophecies of Solomon having 3 different kingships? I mean, I didn't. So I would love to know if any of you have any more information about this. But anyway, it is just a very fascinating book. And if I can find an online copy of it, I'll put it in the description. I can't make any promises at this point, but I will see if I can find it. But if not, you can check Internet Archive yourself, or just the book would be fascinating to have. Like I've said to you guys before, that I think the time is coming where it's going to be important to have these books. And so if, we don't know in the future what will happen with the internet, and it may become impossible to start, finding these books. I'm already starting to notice that, I don't know if you guys have paid attention to Internet Archive or not, but they've had a couple of times in the last few months where they've been down for a few days, and I have noticed that some of the books that we used to be able to download as PDFs are not downloadable anymore. So again, just putting it out there, that if you have the opportunity, pick up some of these books, because I think they're going to be treasures. Okay. So let's go back to the slideshow, and I want to talk about another tradition. Okay, so do you remember our guy Eldad, the Danite from our Kingdom of Israel series? I think I covered him in, I think it was either, I covered him in either video 7 or 8 of the Kingdom of Israel series. So it's interesting that he should come up again, because if you paid attention to what they said in that video, they mentioned Eldad and him leaving and settling in Cush. So I went ahead and pulled this up from last time, and let's read it again. And so it says, so this is from Eldad's diary, and he appeared to some of the rabbis in Safar in Spain, and it was about, I think it was 803 AD. Yeah, I think it was about 803 or 805 AD. So it says, in the name of the Lord, the Most High of Israel, praised be the name of the King of Kings, the Holy One. Blessed be he who has chosen Israel out of all nations, who has given them the law and the commandments, who has separated them from the 70 tongues, so the 70 nations, and who has ordered them to keep the 613 precepts. So long as Israel fulfilled the will of the Most High, no nation could subdue it, until Jeroboam the son of Nebat rose, sinned, and made Israel sin by making 2 golden calves. So now, again, just for context, this is after Solomon had died, and the kingdom has split into the northern kingdom of Israel, and then with the 10 northern tribes, or 10 tribes, and then Judah, the tribes of Judah and Benjamin had stayed down in the southern kingdom of Judah. And so Rehoboam, Solomon's son, so I guess second son, it said that he was 6 years old at the time that Menelik, who was 22, came to visit his father. And so anyway, so Rehoboam was ruling the southern kingdom of Judah, and then Jeroboam was ruling the northern kingdom, and he ended up going really apostate. He had golden calves set up. He ended up introducing his own priesthood, and the Levites were so disgusted that most of them ended up going back down to the kingdom of Judah. And then it said that there were a remnant from each of the other tribes that went with them. And then the other remnants so you've got all the tribes, and then some follow the Levites back down to Judah, and then you had, of the same family members, some that just stayed. And then, of course, we know that the Assyrians came and removed them in 732 BC, and then 10 years later they came and took the rest of them out in 722 BC. So if you're new to us and you're just watching this, you can check the playlist, the channel playlist, and I have all of those videos from the Kingdom of Israel in there for you to watch. So anyway, this is the context that he's talking about. So long as Israel fulfilled the will of the Most High, no nation could subdue it until Jeroboam the son of Nebat rose, sinned and made Israel sin by making 2 golden calves. Then the kingdom of the house of David divided, and Jeroboam gathered together the 10 tribes and told them, "Rise up and make war against Rehoboam and Jerusalem." They, however, answered, "Why should we fight against our brethren and against the son of our master David, the king of Israel and Judah?" The elders of Israel said, "There are no more valiant warriors in all the tribes of Israel than in the tribe of Dan." Therefore Jeroboam ordered the children of Dan to make war against Judah. They, however, said, "By the life of our father's son, we will not fight against our brethren and shed their blood for nothing." So they gave themselves up to death, took their swords, spears, and bows in order to make war against Jeroboam. But the Most High saved them from shedding the blood of their brethren, for they proclaimed throughout the whole tribe, saying, "Fly to Egypt." And they took counsel to destroy Egypt and to kill all of its inhabitants. But their princes said to them, "How could you go to Egypt? Is it not written in the law, 'You shall see them again no more'?" Then they took counsel to fall upon Edom, Amalek, and Ammon, when they heard that it was written in the law that the Most High had forbidden Israel to possess their territory. Finally, the Most High gave them good courage and advice to go up the river Pishon, to continue their wandering on camels, and to encamp until they reached the land of Cush, which again, Cush was ancient, what it was called anciently, Ethiopia, which they found fertile with numerous vineyards and gardens. The Danites settled here, made a covenant with the children of Cush that they should pay tribute to Israel. Thus the Danites dwelled here for many years, multiplying and increasing greatly. They were then followed by 3 other tribes, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, who crossed the desert and encamped until they came to the territory of the Danites. In their wanderings, they slew many Cushites in a territory extending 4 days' journey in each direction, and have been fighting with 7 kingdoms up to this day. And these 4 tribes, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher, and those who dwelt in the ancient Havilah, where there is gold, trusted in the Most High, who helped them against their kingdom, and these tribes put their hands on the neck of their enemies. So I'm going to stop here for a second. And I think we are talking about 2 different groups within Ethiopia. So remember that Menelik was anointed and made king by Solomon, and then he went back to Ethiopia. Okay, so we have a Hebrew kingdom in Ethiopia. And I think that that is what is meant when it said the Danites settled here and made a covenant with the children of Cush that they should pay, that the children of Cush should pay tribute to Israel. And I believe they're probably dealing. It would make sense that they're dealing with that Hebrew kingdom there, because then it says later on that they made war in their wanderings. They slew many Cushites. So I think that what we have going on here is we've got within Ethiopia, you've got Cushites, which technically are, they are descendants of Ham. And then for some reason, the Queen of Sheba, even though she was living in Cush, it doesn't seem to be that she was of Ham's descent. Being from Sheba, she would have been, I think she's from Joktan, which was from Shem. So they were a Semitic people. So not everybody dwelling in Cush was a Cushite descended from Ham. So I think this is the distinction that's being made here, is that the Hebrew kingdom that was set up, they are paying tribute to the Danites, but these other Cushites, which are descended from Ham, they are going to war with and they're slaughtering. And then just also, let me continue and see if it says it. See how far I went. And then here are the rabbis. So what I just read came from Eldad's diary. And then here are the rabbis writing about Eldad. And it says, "To us came the pious man Eldad of the tribe of Dan to bring good tidings to scattered Israel. When he left the land on the other side of the rivers of Cush, he traveled with a man of the tribe of Asher in a small boat with the intention of doing some commerce with the crew, more essentially to buy cloaks and jewelry. Jewelry. A great storm wrecked the boat in the middle of the night, but the Most High prepared a plank for him and his companion on which they kept floating until they were thrown up amongst the tribe called Amarnim. They are black as a raven, of high stature, and are cannibals. They seized at first the man of the tribe of Asher, who was fat and healthy, and devoured him alive. Eek. He cried out and said, 'Woe to my mother who has borne me! Woe to the Creator who has handed me over to a cruel death! For the Cushites eat my flesh.'" I mean, that's quite a picture, right? They're eating him alive. They're devouring him alive. And he's crying out and saying this. And then after having devoured this pious man, they put a collar on Eldad's neck, intending to keep him until he became fat and healthy. For at present he was ill and lean, and so they gave him food. Thus he remained with the cannibals until the Most High by a miracle saved him. Armed men from another place came upon the Cushites, took them prisoner, and slew them. Amongst the captives was this just Danite, and he remained with these fire worshippers during 4 years, when they brought him to the province of Sin, or like where the wilderness of Sin or Zin, where a Jew paid the price for his ransom. So, let me see. Okay. So, all of this is taking place, or I guess I didn't put it in this section, but these particular Danites, including, now I don't know if Eldad, 722, I guess Eldad would have been with them because again, well, maybe not. No, I guess Eldad would have been descended from them because in the rest of that diary, it says that because the Danites did not want to fight against the kingdom of Judah, their brethren, and because they could foretell or they could foresee, just because of all of the idol worship going on in northern Israel, they left. They left, and it was 14 years before the Assyrians came in. So, I don't know, 732 maybe, and then 14 years before that. And they left, and they settled over in Ethiopia, this area. So, and then eventually the tribes of Asher, Naphtali, and Gad came. And so, or some of them came. And so, this was all before the Assyrians came and removed everyone. So just very, very interesting. So there's been several migrations of Hebrews or of Hebrew Israelites into this area. And then, of course, if you remember, during those of you who were with me when we went through the Kingdom of Israel, there was that whole thing with Presbyter John. Remember? And he had the kingdom in Abyssinia, and then also over in, what was it? Over in Tartaria, and they were below the 10 tribes that were living in Arsareth. And remember, he had a kingdom, a Christian kingdom below them. So I think there's probably a whole lot more to this whole story in Ethiopia. Very, very interesting, because then we have the kingdom of Judah being destroyed in 70 AD, right? But there was still a remnant of Judah that had been transplanted. So we still had, a king from Judah, from Solomon, on the throne in Ethiopia. So, and they're still going to this day. So I just find this all very, very interesting. So that's all I have for you right now. This is the end of part 5A. And then I'll give you guys a couple of days to watch this, and then I'm going to go ahead and release 5B to you. Again, I'm so sorry. It's been a couple weeks since I put any videos out. So I'll release this one today, and then I'll wait a couple of days for you guys to get through it, and then I will release 5B, so then we can wrap up with the other Hebrews. And then part 6 will be in about a week, and we're going to cover the Sephardic and the Portuguese Jews / Hebrews in that video. All right, take care.